Good evening, YouTube, and welcome back to another edition of Paisano's Music and Vinyl Talk. I am your host, Paisano. Tonight we're going to be talking about an early classic, early thrash classic. Thrash was a new form of heavy metal and hard rock back in the early 80s, made popular by Metallica, who we're going to be talking about tonight, Slayer, Anthrax, Megadeth, Venom, all the early superstars of thrash. This is an EP, which is a short album that was released. It was originally released in 1984. This is a repress from 1985. And it features 2 songs on the studio side and 2 songs on the live side. I'm not exactly sure where the 2 live tracks were recorded. I'm sure you could find that out if you dug a little deeper. But this was a hungry band at this time. Metallica was just getting started, and this was a new form of hard rock and heavy metal. They made their presence known pretty quickly, along with the other bands I mentioned, that a new type of music was on the horizon, post-punk, and an alternative to the hair metal that was to rear its ugly head in the years to come. And Metallica stayed a hungry band too, for quite a while, all the way up to the 1990 release, 1991 release of what would become called the Black Album, but it was just called Metallica. After that, still had their fans. They still put on good shows, but they weren't as hungry as they were around this time. And their full-length studio album, their first full-length studio album, was called Kill 'Em All. Came out in 1983, 84, and right away it caught people's attention. I always thought of Metallica as like the Led Zeppelin of my time, my teenage years, and I always thought of U2 as like the Beatles of my time. But this had some, like I said, it was on Megaforce Records. This is before they got signed to Elektra. This was on Megaforce, and then they started to get too big for Megaforce, and Elektra picked them up. And I believe Ride the Lightning was a co-release. Megaforce, the Megaforce label, does appear on the Elektra label for Ride the Lightning, which came out in '84, I believe. But by the time Master of Puppets came out in '86, they were on Elektra exclusively. Elektra had the means to distribute the records in a much more on a much grander scale than Megaforce. Megaforce was a tiny label, but they gave Metallica their start, and they are to be credited for that. Metallica definitely had its day, definitely had its time in rock history. On the studio side, you have Jump in the Fire, an absolute stone cold early Metallica classic, and the second song on side 1, the studio side, is Whiplash, and this is listed as a special neck brace remix, whatever that means. But two real good songs on the studio side. On the live side, you have Seek and Destroy and Phantom Lord. Classics, early Metallica classics. There's some various shots of the band on the back, and this is in pretty good shape. I bought this at Quincy Records. No doubt they had a much more extensive heavy metal section, dedicated heavy metal section. And this is the vinyl. You can see it's a gray label with black lettering. Megaforce Records, the Metallica logo right below it. And like I said, this was a repress of the original that came out the year before. It was repressed in '85. And I bought this right after we saw them open for Ozzy in April of 1986. My friends who were with me had no idea who they were. I had seen them on MTV on a heavy metal special. I believe it was the Day in the Green in Oakland. Big heavy metal concert, hard rock concert. And I had seen a clip of Metallica. And when I saw them on stage opening for Ozzy, I'm like, hey, those are those guys I saw with the long hair. And they used to spin their hair around in the early days. James Hetfield and Cliff Burton, their bassist, who suffered an untimely death in September of 1986 while they were out on the road very early on in their career. A true loss. Tremendous talent, tremendously talented bass player. And like I said, Metallica broke new ground. And they definitely have their place in hard rock history. All right, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. If you're enjoying the content, please like and subscribe. I'd appreciate it very, very much. Good night, YouTube.